panzercrush.com.
Hello everyone, welcome to our second ever episode of Neo PyschoBabble. I'm your host, Chris Eaton. Today, I am proud to have this gentleman on. He was a staple in the Southern California wrestling scene in what I called the golden days of the early 2000s. He stepped out of the limelight because he had a life to live, but today he's here to tell us his story. I'm excited as hell, sir. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
God damn it, Chris. Thank you for having me. This is Gun Talwar.
So, for those of you who might be new to wrestling, or you've only heard, the early tales of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, this man was one of the founding members. He was a staple of the scene back in the day. Like every show you would hit. I mean, but well, you know what? Let's start there, sir. Let's go back to the beginning. When did you start training?
I was about 15 or so when I started obviously like everyone else backyarding.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing it with a group out of Monrovia, California. So a couple of them ended up getting involved in wrestling later on, more so in like a referee or announcing capacity. From there, I decided, I wanted to actually, officialize the thing and get, find training local to Southern California. I found out about the IWC school led by Bill Anderson. Of course, when I was like, 15 at the time, trying to scope out a school that would actually have me there, just based on my age, was kind of a constraint. So actually, I phoned the ECW school at one point. I was like 15. At the time, you think it's like, it's a huge company, at a national scale. So you're going to get like an official admin or secretary picking up the phone. But believe it or not, Taz actually picked up. So Taz picked up. I think I was 15 at the time. I inquired, like, what's the process to start training? First question he asked me is like, how old are you? I gave him an honest answer, and he just hung up on me. It wasn't discouraging by any means. It was kind of a long shot. I lived in Southern California at the time. Training, I would have had to move to like Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a future thought in terms of like, actually maybe like going to school, like going to college out there, something like that to that extent. But instead, I decided to kind of scope out local schools. So IWC was the first school I targeted. Interestingly enough,
and for setting, what year are we talking about right now?
1999.
Okay.
So, kind of exposing my age there, but yeah, 1999 was the year. So that the day I targeted a date for to join the class, and given this, so I lived in Sierra Madre at the time. IWC school was in San Bernardino, so quite a distance.
Oh yeah.
Thankfully, my sister actually was going to school at UC Riverside, so it made it a little bit easier in terms of logistics. Like, at the time wasn't driving, so my mom actually drove me over to the school, just dropped me off there. My sister picked me up after, but that was only one session, literally one session. So before the session, I actually went to, I had no idea as far as like, wrestling gear and whatnot. I actually went to like Walmart and I bought bicycle knee pads. for wrestling training. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So, I went to the school. At the time, I want to say guys like, Ricky Reyes, TJ Perkins, this guy named Sun Warrior, who was a local SoCal talent for a while, and Smooth Billy D were there. I couldn't tell you exactly who was leading the training. I know that Bill Anderson was just kind of standing on the outside monitoring, probably nervous that like a 15-year-old was in his ring, potentially going to get hurt and wearing bicycle knee pads. But I would say that first session was just like, it was kind of like a wake-up call. I woke up the next morning, I just couldn't move. At the same time, I had a drive and a passion for the sport, and I wanted to keep going. Now logistics, it wasn't a bad experience at all at IWC. I think logistics wouldn't allow me to train there further. So I would say I took a sabbatical for about a few months. I started finding out more about local shows. So I was I was actually a huge tape trader growing up. To the point where, I would go.
Now you're really putting your your age out there, man. With the tape trading.
Yeah. Oh yeah, VHS. I had multiple VCRs. I want to say I started that maybe mid '90s into my early wrestling career. I even had a website like Dragon Video. I probably traded with some of the most prestigious tape traders at the time. But one of the big things, every weekend, and I'm grateful that my mother has always been supportive of my hobbies. So even at the ripe age of 15, wasn't able to drive. She would actually drive me to Little Tokyo every weekend, and I would hit up all the video stores I possibly could there, just to get some Japanese wrestling videos.
Oh, that's dedication right there. Because people today be like, oh yeah, I got New Japan World. Back then you're like, okay, you're jumping in, and God forbid you have any idea where a feud is at or anything going on. But that's the nice thing about Japanese wrestling, is the fact that it's you don't kind of need the background. They put on such such clinics that you're just like, shit, all right, cool, this was fantastic.
Yeah, and I want to say I found out more about it through tape trading. There wasn't a huge internet presence at the time. There were there was this thing called Crazy Max Wrestling Forums, which was a tape trading kind of just a website where people could go and just.
Was it kind of like a message board kind of thing?
Yeah, it was totally a message board. So you could go in there, just discuss what's going on, and it was global too. So guys from the Netherlands are on there. I know guys Aleister Black and Tengwa had found out about Revolution Pro through that channel.
Oh wow.
Which is crazy to think about at the time. So actually a lot of the information that I found out for even locally on local shows was out there as well. So I found information on WPW, which ran on the Anaheim Marketplace. I think I saw Ihoda Santo on a show in '99 in front of maybe less than 100 people. I was also I used to go to Frankensons.
Oh yes.
So Frankensons, yes. For anyone that doesn't know, I actually used to go there I'm a huge baseball card collector, so I would go there, in the late '90s just to get baseball cards. But then I found out I was also a wrestling hobbyist, so I found a guy named Bart.
Oh, Bart, AWS Bart. Yep.
Yeah, AWS Bart. He ran a shop out of there, and every now and then he'd have signings too. So he had the XPW crew down there one night. I think it was a Wednesday night. No one was lining up whatsoever. I couldn't tell you if this was '99 or 2000. I think they were on to their second or third show. But I found out about XPW through that. And obviously went to a couple of shows, really excited about the product.
Which shows which shows back then did you hit up?
I went to a show in Ventura, one of the shows in Ventura, and then also the My Bloody Valentine show, the original deathmatch.
Oh, okay, so, wow. All right, well, that's a hell of a deal. That's a huge deal right there on that one. I never got the chance to go to the original run. I only got to go to the shows after Shane Douglas took over, which those in their own selves were something to behold, especially the last Van Nuys show they ran that went to 3 a.m.
Oh yeah, those are exciting. I think a lot of the stuff at the LA Sports Arena, or even the Pico Sports Arena, going back and looking at it, were these kind of historic shows to some extent.
They were. There was always something insane happening on one of those shows. That was the beauty of XPW. You never got a great show, but you never got a bad show. You walked away entertained every single time.
Yeah, no, I was a huge supporter of those guys, and I know they were likewise of Revolution Pro, including guys Super Dragon, Rising Sun, Disco, Excalibur on their shows quite frequently. I think it kind of it boosted the signal in terms of Revolution Pro and like fans awareness of the product. So I'm very much appreciative of XPW, and I think they're big proponents in laying the foundation for Southern California wrestling.
They very much were. I think once they kind of broke big, you started seeing a lot of smaller promotions really start to pop up around that time. I think War, and a couple of them came out of that.
Yeah, Pro Wrestling War. Actually, Pro Wrestling War spawned from Epic, which was run by Gary Yap, and it kind of branched off into that. But a lot of that laid the foundation for a lot of startups wrestling in Southern California, and also just the style too. Alone too. It was unique at the time. It wasn't that unique because you had ECW. They tried to make themselves stand out in different ways. I think one of the big things is they had local talent on the shows.
Oh, very much so.
Local talent done with outsiders, which is kind of a model which we followed thereafter with PWG. I think it's much appreciation to the XPW crew, including guys like Kevin Kleinrock. It deserves all the respect in the world from a SoCal perspective.
Kleinrock, who a little side tangent, asked my buddy to give Terry Funk a ride home one night. Who, by the way, Terry Funk had wrestled a match, and let's just say had a few libations afterwards, and was probably in no condition to be taken to the airport by anyone who didn't know him at all. So that's kind of the wild mentality that XPW had.
I think that's a great story. I think I had a couple encounters with Terry Funk. So one of them, nothing like that though. That's incredible. One of the I think the first time I had met him was I went to the Beyond the Mat premiere in Angeles. I can't tell you. I think I was 16 at the time. Again, my mom drove me down there. I don't think she actually saw. I don't know if she saw the show with me or she just dropped me off and like I went to the premiere, and then like after the show, like I was such a fan of Terry Funk and a lot of the stuff even like Mick Foley. So after Terry Funk was physically there, so after I think I had to shake his hand, so I chased him down. I think it was the very last person to actually like there was like press all over him, but like I went up there, he took the time to greet me and shake my hand. It was it stood out to me. It's one of the fondest memories of my wrestling career. And being 16 at the time, and that was probably the biggest star I had met at that point.
Wait, that's huge. That's you're still at that age at 16. You're still kind of a kid, and these guys are still larger than life for you.
Oh, absolutely. No, I felt that way. Even I want to say I did XPW ring crew a couple of times. At the time, Pat Hernandez, who was a referee at XPW, and later he refereed several PWG and Revolution Pro shows in Southern California. He was leading up the ring crew, so I was thrilled to be part just to be part of a ring crew. Nowadays, you hear people complain about paying dues or even setting up rings or whatnot, but I was absolutely thrilled to be doing that. And even they did got some ring time before, rolling around and taking some bumps. But just to do that, and even seeing, I think one of the shows I had seen almost like a reveal of Abdullah the Butcher was there. One of the shows.
Wow.
He was a surprise. He made a surprise appearance later on the show, but just to see him at the time and as a 16-year-old kid, I was just absolutely thrilled. But it's funny because I didn't choose XPW, their school, again because of logistics. So they were out in West LA. I want to say even as far as Ventura, the warehouse there, where they mixed in wrestling training with porno shoots. So I logistics didn't quite work out there. And overall interest in maybe I was more of a Japanese lucha libre wrestling fan at the time. I think that resonated with me the most. So I was before I found out about RevPro, I was contemplating going to Martin Marin School in Anaheim, WPW. But then I found out about RevPro through the Crazy Max Wrestling forums again. Now the guy that posted at the time, I want to say was he wrestled as Taro.
Okay.
Pro. He's he's also made some PWG appearances in the past.
I remember
So
Taro.
he had posted on the Crazy Max Wrestling forums about RevPro. I think he posted a flyer and everything. It was February of 2000, and the main event on that show was Super Dragon and Disco Machine. Now, just going into this warehouse at the time, it was a small, like industrial like warehouse. Like I think it's still actually around. It's Taro, Disco Machine, and I just we decided one day, like recently, a couple of months back, to just let's drive by and see what's going on there. Turns out like there's like a brewery a couple of doors down, so we actually hung out in the brewery, took a few pictures of like the old dojo, just kind of reminiscing about that place. But so I went over to this old this place in Anaheim, small dinky warehouse. My expectations were pretty low going in, but at the same time, whatever, just knowing that there's like a masked guy, like some Lucha Libre-esque kind of characters on the show excited me.
Mm-hmm.
And that main event just really blew my mind. I think everything on the show, at the time, Excalibur was on the show, Taro, again, Super Dragon, Disco Machine, American Wild Child, Rising Sun, amongst others. Their style of wrestling just really resonated with me. And, I made the decision on the fly after that, like, this is the place where I'm going to go. So I went to a couple shows thereafter. I started filming the shows, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was, I did that quite a bit, actually, in Southern California, like different shows, even like Freddie Valentine's AWC shows. I was, I did like a little bit of like, cam work on the side. So, even after filming the shows, I never got permission for this, but I did trade the tapes, and I can tell you, firsthand that the Revolution Pro stuff was very much in demand at the time. So especially like some of the matches, I think one of the big matches at the time that year was Super Dragon against Taro.
Yes, I remember. That was, I think, the second year that SoCal Uncensored had started. I think they named that match the match of the year. I want to say that's what I'm recalling right now.
Yeah, it might have been that, or it might have been the match with Rising Sun. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look at like the history on SoCal Uncensored, but this was at the very first dojo, Super Dragon and Taro. I think I still have the footage, like the 8mm cam somewhere around.
Oh, wow.
I know that's made its way through circles and circles of like people, and I've even seen clips of like the stuff I filmed on like Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Naylor is one of the ones that posts like some old RevPro stuff, Super Dragon and the whole crew.
I mean, it's interesting considering that. I mean, there's not a lot of that stuff that made its way online. I mean, I think I found last night when I was prepping for this, I think I found maybe like 2 clips at best from like RevPro, and I found a couple of war matches. I found your match with Generico, but going beyond that, unless it wasn't PWG or Bart, there's really not much up there right now.
Yeah, a lot of stuff was posted at one point. There was never any legal issues or anything. It was just there was some confusion over like who was the rightful owner of the footage for a while. There was rumors at one point that Kevin Kleinrock had bought the rights to Revolution Pro. That's not true. A lot of I've run into American Wild Child, who's the owner of RevPro, a few times, and at Disneyland of all places. Like I think at least like 2 or 3 times in the last like couple of years, just randomly running into him. And like I've asked him like, can we just start posting this stuff if like we had the footage? He was just like, he doesn't really care too much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not looking to monetize it.
Yeah.
Or, like make money off of it. I would just like it's cool to like kind of reminisce about like the stuff we did, and like there's a lot of history behind RevPro too, because that's where like the Young Bucks started.
Oh yeah, I mean that's when at the top of the show when I said there was a golden age of Southern California wrestling. That's you're right there at the start of it, right there.
Absolutely, guys like Scorpio Sky started there. Los Luchas. I mean, obviously like Super Dragon, Excalibur. A lot of names that are even like really gone out there and made a name for themselves now. Like come from RevPro.
Mm-hmm.
So, like whether they trained there, they came across there at the early stages. or even just like just, just throughout time, like a lot of guys have just come past through there. It's pretty amazing.
I'm hoping, hopefully, one day we could see a lot of that. Because again, there's, whatever got into the tape traders past that, that there's not a lot out there. It'd be fun to go back and watch some of that early stuff.
Yeah, a lot of it's just kind of honestly like maybe it's on Disco Machine and myself. We have a lot of the footage. In fact, like the very last RevPro show is something I had never seen for maybe 15 years until recently. I think Disco Machine had the hard cams.
Oh wow!
So that was actually really fun to see. But a lot of the footage, maybe it's kind of on us over time. You can keep pestering us to put it out there, and obviously we're going to get permission from American Watchdog.
Yeah,
to maybe post it.
And like YouTube or Vimeo or something like that. Just it's because again there were some damn good matches out there. It's stuff like RevPro that brought my attention. My buddy's like, dude, you got to see some of this stuff. I'm like, really? And mind you, at that time I'd only been into wrestling for 3 or 4 years, and so all I know is WWF at the time. That's it. That's the world I know. And he's just like, no. There's he's like, where do you think these guys come from? Where do you think they start? And when you go there and you're seeing insane shit go on that you're not seeing on TV at the time unless you're watching ECW. And I didn't have cable, and thus did not see any ECW until well after it pretty much died out. So this was my first experience. Oh, this is what wrestling could be. So again, it's something I loved. I talk about to a lot of people, and people who were there all just wax poetic about it.
Yeah, no, it was definitely beyond its time. And it's funny now that just talking with guys that are in WWE, or speaking to guys in AEW, some of them will even credit the state of modern day wrestling back to Revolution Pro, just Revolution Pro and PWG laying the foundation for modern day wrestling, which if I look at it too, I'd 100% agree.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a lot of the style, the people, Southern California in general is you look at all the guys that come out of there, it's pretty amazing.
You watch AEW right now, what they're doing, what the Bucks took being the Elite to and put up there on the grand scale. That all comes out of the mid 2000s. That style, the look, the gravitas of it all, just how they approach everything. That's all out of Southern California. As much as a lot of people want to, they love to, give Ring of Honor of these guys are built. Ring of Honor back in those days took themselves for my personal taste, a little too serious, where Southern California had a little more laid back attitude about it. This is, it's we know what this is, but we could still put on great matches and have fun with it at the same time. And that's definitely what it seems like the appeal of AEW has pulled with a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's what stood out about PWG for a while with people, how we could differentiate ourselves from a company like Ring of Honor or anywhere else. You just have a little lightheartedness to some of the matches. Instills a little bit of comedy, mix it in with 5-star matches, mix it in with a little hardcore as well every now and then. I think you got yourself more holistic, complete product.
Oh yes.
So that's the way we really went about differentiating ourselves in time. Revolution Pro was also a mix of mostly local talent. On rare occasion, AWC would bring in some outside talent. One of the big names that he brought in at an early time was a guy named you may know as Kikutaro.
Oh yes. I just saw him recently too. I saw him on
That's,
Joey Janela's show.
Definitely one of my heroes, wrestling heroes growing up. I knew him at a young age, still know him today very well. So it's been about 20 years since I've actually known him. It's funny because he originally wrestled as under without a mask as Mitsunobu Kikuzawa. Mm-hmm. So he did a couple of CW shows while he was here. He did Revolution Pro as well. I just immediately fell in love with the guy's style. Like one of the first, I think it was like the third or fourth RevPro show I attended, which is also one of the shows I recorded. Like he got on the mic, and the first thing he says is, "Mr. T is a homosexual." I mean, like how can you not laugh at that? Like this guy that barely knows English, and this is like the first words that come out of his mouth. Apparently, he learned English from watching this Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy's Raw is like one of the common sections from Eddie Murphy. That's how he came, that was his method of learning English. Pretty amazing. Like I just immediately fell in love with this guy, and the wrestling itself spoke for itself. And also at the time, I was a big fan of Japanese wrestling in general. So just seeing some anyone Nosawa and him, I think were there, but anyone to come out of Japan was really exciting. I think Sanshiro Takagi, who's the owner of DDT, was also out at one of the RevPro shows at an early stage and wrestled with Mr. Excitement as well. So
wow,
I want to say
that's a name I haven't heard in years.
Yeah, I want to say I have one of the original Sanshiro 316 shirts. It was on at the time, but I think what I want to say was I had just started training, or it was around the time I started training. I was talking with Sanshiro about my ambition to one day wrestle in Japan, and he was just telling me you get strong, you train, and you come wrestle in Japan one day. Regretfully, I never took that opportunity, but at the same time, it resonated with me at the time and stood out and actually got me a little bit encouraged. It's like knowing that, maybe if I, put in some time into this, actually, follow it as an immediate passion, maybe I can do something with it. So I started training, I digress a bit. So I started training at RevPro, 6 years old. Finally got my license to where, logistics didn't really matter too much. So RevPro is based out of Anaheim. I was driving from Pasadena to Anaheim, which at the time traffic wasn't as bad in Southern California. So maybe it took me 30 minutes. I used to go 2 or 3 times a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, I didn't really come from an athletic background. I played baseball as a kid. Played baseball a little bit into high school. In fact, I would have kept playing baseball, but one of the coaches in high school told me I was probably too short to make it anywhere or continue playing. So a bit discouraged from that. I decided, why not try wrestling? At the time, probably wrestling was not the best choice from the standpoint of being too short or not being roided up.
Mm-hmm.
That was the era at the time. But nonetheless, I had a passion for it. I enjoyed watching the Japanese and lucha libre style wrestling. The stuff I was seeing through tape trading. So RevPro was my choice in the end. At the time, it was a mix of different trainers. So I worked primarily with American Wild Child, Super Dragon, Disco Machine, Mr. Excitement. Also, at the time, there wasn't too many students. Scorpio Sky and guys like Quicksilver, Chris Bosch joined a little bit later than me, maybe a year after.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a little bit of head start. Like I said, I wasn't overly athletic, so it took me some time to get acclimated with everything. I want to say also I was training on the side a bit with Mondo Guerrero.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Mondo Guerrero did a few sessions at RevPro, as well as the guys I back started with. We used to go and actually help set up some rings for his local shows that he was running, and he would have sessions for us as well. He was really actually an intense trainer. That some of the basics, things that you wouldn't learn otherwise, just the little things he was so good at. And we trained with him a few times. For the most part, we were at RevPro. I want to say maybe a year into my training, a little bit less. I had my first match.
Do you remember?
Just trying to.
I mean, did you have the gimmick yet, or were you?
No. So I wrestled originally as El Hijo del Gallinero. So the Gallineros, who are now known as the Crazy Chickens on Lucha Boom, it's a legacy at RevPro. So
mm-hmm.
Most everyone, I think anyone who has wrestled as Gallinero at some point. Scorpio Sky was Gallinero 3. Charles Mercury was Gallinero 4. Quicksilver wrestled as Guy Arrow every now and then. The Young Bucks as well, like Lucha Vavoom, Los Luchas. I mean, you name it. You name someone, they probably wrestled as Guy Arrow. So I wrestled as Guy Arrow. I want to say the match was myself, American Wild Child, and a guy named Demento from San Diego against Taro, Excalibur, and this other student at the time named Shogun at RevPro. So this is Excalibur from AEW Excalibur. It was also like kind of like he had just started around that time as well. But yeah, I was a young guy in the match, and it wasn't much of anything. It was more of a comedic thing. I think I faked like a Sasuke special, doing like a shitty cartwheel. Took a couple bumps. I had like no offense. I think I did like a tornado DDT. But like it was fun because I mean just to get myself acclimated with like a crowd. It was a small, those shows could only accommodate maybe like 50 people at max.
And a lot of them are probably friends and stuff too. That's
a lot of them are friends. Like Buddy George, this guy named Buddy George. I think half of his family used to go to shows, but they were great. They were rowdy. They created a good presence for the crowd. Beyond that, though, like there were some internet smarks as well that used to attend. Like some guys from like I want to say it's Steve from SoCal Uncensored. Like might have gone to some of those old dojo shows, as well as like some other people that I've met like Crazy Max wrestling forums. So there was a decent sized presence at the shows and at least some exposure. Never got paid really. Throughout my time at RevPro, I probably got paid like once or twice amongst like all those shows. And
probably not even enough to cover the gas to even get down there one way, right?
Absolutely not. No. At the same time, I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful and glad that I began my career at RevPro. I'm grateful for everything that American Wild Child has done for me. I'm grateful for all the trainers for what they've done for me. I think that was the right decision for me to choose Revolution Pro amongst other schools. And I don't think I would have gone as far as I did if I didn't start there.
So let's move on. When do you start developing the Top Gun character?
Top Gun character came. So I went through a couple rounds of characters. Obviously, Hoda Guy was one of them. I think I wrestled as Jason on one show with the mask and everything. And then one of my characters was on this Park Consumer. It used to be a show that was put on. I want to say this guy named Marty Goldstein was the promoter. It was a show put on. It was like a used car show, and they would have a wrestling show like kind of in the middle of it. Some of the shows, like we got like people would kind of gather around and watch for a bit, but some of them had like maybe less than 5 people. I want to say we wrestled in Brawley at one point in like 110-degree weather outside.
Oh, you went all the way down to Brawley to wrestle?
Brawley, Calexico, the whole crew.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so, okay. Like Super Dragon, everyone, Disco Machine. We all caravan down there.
Yeah, real quick for people who are not familiar with the Southern California area, Brawley it's about 10 miles south of the Salton Sea, which in itself is in the middle of godforsaken nowhere. It's like literally the center of the state, the southern tip of the state, and there is nothing down there but a few scattered towns. It's all like a farming community. I think like from LA, it's like a good 3-hour drive. And the fact that you guys went out there to do shows is mind blowing to me.
Yeah, just for the the love of the sport. Like I said, like the money wasn't all there, but it was just the love of the sport and love of the game. I think just no regrets from that standpoint. I think it also built like a strong camaraderie.
Yeah.
Lasting friendships that I have still today.
But therein lies, that's still the old carny aspect of it, is the fact that it's like, well, we're going to go do a show in Brawley. If 20 people show up, 20 people show up. So let's pack up and go and head down there. So there, and again, honestly, if you weren't wrestling, would you ever have a reason to drive down to like Calexico or Brawley?
Not since.
Yeah, pretty much.
Not since. I can't even say I've been like Bakersfield. I went to Bakersfield a couple times for wrestling. I I can't say I've been there since. Yeah, there's certain places that I wrestle. Like, yeah, I don't plan to ever go back to it again. But
I don't think.
um,
Yeah, but Bakersfield. No one is intentionally going to Bakersfield for anything. It's one of those things. It's like I have business to conduct there.
yeah, no diss on Bakersfield. I think there's some wonderful people out there, but yeah, just I wouldn't go there just to visit.
Yeah.
Um,
So you're
so on one
traveling.
of the
So
yeah
you're traveling. You're wrestling. You're still working. You're still you're figuring out the gimmick.
yeah so went through a couple rounds like I mentioned. So on one of the car consumer shows, I wrestled as El Hijo del Negro Blanco Jr., which is like a paradox in itself, like the the son of the white and black Junior. Just a cluster of names. So I just really couldn't figure out like where I wanted to be placed, like or land.
Mm-hmm.
At some, there are certain times where like I contemplated, like I really wanted to wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
I was big on like Dr. Wagner Jr. was one of my favorite luchadors, so I wanted to like I kind of wanted to like mimic that and like follow suit with like Super Dragon, Excalibur, and actually be like a masked wrestler. While I was training though, like I also placed a lot of emphasis on like facial expressions and like showing some personality, showing some charisma. So they encouraged me, a lot of the guys at RevPro, to go maskless, and I'm very glad I did. I don't think I would have. Again, I didn't have the most athletic ability, so I don't think I would have lasted as luchador, unless it's comparable with some like Super Porky or like that skill set. Yeah, no, I decided to go maskless, and I thought about a name that kind of like stuck with my last name.
Mm-hmm.
So my last name is an Indian surname, Talwar, which is a Punjabi last name. It means sword.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted a name that would actually connect with that, my last name. Top Gun kind of stood out. I had no connection, nothing, no history in like the like Navy or anything like that. I've never been to Miramar. Prior to that, I saw the movie Top Gun. So I had no connections with that, no history. But the name just connected with my last name,
Mm-hmm.
so I stuck with it, ran with it.
There's some alliteration to it.
Yeah. So the first show I did as Top Gun. I had like the music ready, my entrance music ready, obviously Danger Zone.
Mm-hmm.
But they played the wrong song. So my first match is Top Gun. I want to say I came out. I don't remember like maybe it was Queen, like Another One Bites the Dust.
Yeah.
It was very lucha-esque moment, where like they're playing the wrong music or like announcing my name wrong. So, but yeah, ran with the name. With the name Top Gun thereafter.
Do you remember the show that you you debuted the Top Gun name on?
Yeah, it was actually at the Pomona Boys and Girls Club. I wrestled against Sergeant or Corporal Striker, I can't remember. Had a huge feud with him, like several matches to start my Top Gun career. But yeah, it was the Pomona Boys and Girls Club. It was quite good attendance. Most of them were actually part like the younger kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a pretty cool crowd, at least. I want to say I probably got concussed in that match because like I think he did a dive and just landed on the back of my head. I guess I wasn't too savvy in terms of catching people.
Mm-hmm.
I hit the back of my head. It was a minor concussion where I was able to continue the match, but like briefly got knocked out there. At the same time, I was just so excited, and that was probably the biggest crowd I've wrestled in front of at that point. So I think that got me like really motivated, and it was kind of time to step up. After that, I was probably approaching 17 at the time. I realized like I got to get in better shape. So I started focusing more on like working out, eating healthier. A lot of the other guys at RevPro weren't as health conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Relative to like places like W or elsewhere, they weren't really focused on bodybuilding their bodies, with the exception of like guys like maybe Mr. Excitement or Disco Machine. Mr. Excitement still has a six pack, like at aging like at age 50 right now. So it's pretty amazing. Like he's some of the guys were, you know, at least a role model for that. And I realized, like, you know, to be a maskless wrestler, and to, you know, do anything with this, I'm gonna probably have to, you know, work out a bit and get in shape. So I did focus on health for the next few years quite a bit, including like rolling into PWG. But like the Top Gun character itself really kind of evolved over time as well. So that was just a start. So at first it was like a kind of a happy-go-lucky guy that was, you know, part of like the Navy, Naval Air Force, and like, you know, I came out with dog tags. I even like a tearaway flight suit, and kind of evolved from there. As I started, like, you know, work out more, and like, you know, I kind of wanted to do a parody of what I saw in wrestling at the time. So the character evolved, and like, you know, I decided, like, you know, I'm going to do like a roid rage character. So I did a slight parody on steroids in wrestling. To the point that one show I came out with, they didn't have like actual needles at the time, but I came out with syringes and handed them out to the audience. Now I identify it as diabetes awareness, but at the time it's probably a little risque thing to do. But yeah, I wanted to kind of expand the character, make it a little more obscure.
But that was the gene.
Like,
but see that right there. That is why you went to these shows back then, because I mean, I think you can back it up. Those crowds, unlike today, did not give a fuck. They ate all that shit up. They were very much as part of the show as the show itself. And I mean, I've been to shows where I've watched dads encourage their small children to curse out all the heels. Like, and I'm not talking about like, you know, boo. I'm talking about like, fuck you, like chants starting. I'm watching 4-year-olds next to me. I'm just like, really? Okay, wow, okay. This is an interesting experience. But yeah, something like that right there. That's the kind of creativity you kind of don't see anymore. Like, no one's really doing that kind of thing anymore.
Yeah, I wanted something to, you know, away from the normalcy of just being like a general, like a cookie cutter wrestler. At the time, like, you know, I think personality was one big thing. I saw, like, you know, something to stand out from the crowd itself, something to differentiate myself. So that was one of the big things in terms of the evolving character. Obviously, it got way out of hand. It became like a, you know,
later
became like a cokehead coming out with the blow up doll. Yeah,
because I mean, you go from a military-esque kind of character to the final years, which we'll get into a little bit. It is a night and day difference, and you're just sitting there like, how in God's name did this end up like this? But at the same time, it is genius. It speaks a lot on your actual creativity. That's you know, I see, like, when I go to shows now, I see a lot of guys. They are what I would call the backyard aesthetic 2.0, where it's like, okay, we're professionally trained, but a lot of them are just kind of like, you know, they're they got their tights or their trunks, and they're kind of doing their moves, and that's about it. No one's really got characters anymore. And I know that there was like a big pushback against characters a while back, but I mean, you look at someone like today, like Orange Cassidy, who my buddy Charles and I both said, like, he took a lot from what you did. Like, that guy's character, like, a lot of it, his wrestling is one thing. I've seen him actually wrestling. He's pretty good, but also it's the fact that the character is what wins you over so much. That's exactly what you were doing back in the day.
Absolutely. I think just to differentiate yourself from the rest of the crowd, like, you know, speaks wonders. Especially, it's a testament to, like, you know, his ability. You know, just the crowd. Just to look at the crowd response to him. Just anything he does, and like he does. You know, I'm all about the concept less is more.
Yes.
And I definitely see that. I definitely see that out of him. I'm a huge fan of his.
Oh, I think
and I know he has he has the ability to go, which is just like it's pretty amazing that he's running with that character, and you know, like, I applaud him all the way through.
Oh yeah,
he's been successful. Yeah.
Because hey, he was just another guy out there, in just trunks. He wouldn't be standing out. But the fact that he's just this kind of laissez-faire character who just doesn't give a fuck, like that's what wins everyone over. And that's and you see a lot of guys now. I see a lot of guys now that are just like they are like they go out there, they put on great matches, but there's just something about them that just doesn't. They're not quite connecting. And part of it is that kind of I feel there is a little bit of a cookie cutter kind of mentality on the current indie scene. Now, mind you, the current indie scene is kind of the pool's much shallower because there has been you got WWE and you got AEW, and to a lesser extent your Impacts and your Ring of Honors just sucking up anything that they can get a hold of right now, which is good for it's fantastic for those guys. But like for the smaller companies right now, they're just like, fuck, what are we going to do?
I still see it as an opportunity. I think it's pushing guys even further.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to a couple of bar wrestling shows, at least one recently around the New Year, and I was really impressed with what I saw. I mean, like the talent is immense right now,
mm-hmm.
and guys realize that they have opportunities, more opportunities than we had in the early 2000s. In the early 2000s, like out of RevPro, the only chance we had was maybe potentially making it to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
If we're lucky, maybe go for an indie run to the East Coast, like CZW, or even like Ring of Honor,
mm-hmm.
a little bit thereafter. But we didn't have like Impact. We didn't have any AEW or WWE. We didn't have those aspirations.
No, that's an interesting thing because at that point, you guys were like, it was like you guys were graduating high school and going into a job market that was in a recession.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there wasn't a lot of things to fall back on too at the time. So, we had to push ourselves extra harder. But I think a lot of guys now, especially in these conditions, especially in like the present day,
mm-hmm.
They're going to have to push themselves even harder.
Yeah. Well,
if they. Oh, go ahead.
No. I'm sorry. It was a cutout. I'm sorry. This is Skype, everyone.
No,
this is how Skype works. So anyway, I'm sorry. Continue on.
Yeah. No, these guys are going to have to push themselves extra harder at this point. If they truly have that, dreams and aspirations, they do. I recommend, at least right now in the current state, that they have a fallback by all means. But if they really have a dream, like now's the time to chase it. Now's the opportunity to kind of seize the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I definitely see some guys with that potential out there right now. And I was really, like I said, I went to the bar wrestling show earlier this year, and I was really impressed with everyone.
Anybody stand out to you right now?
Jake Atlas was in that show. I know he's already been scooped up there. Eli Everfly was another one that stood out to me. He's a local talent, wrestles for Santino Brothers, trains there. So actually, a lot of the people that are coming to Santino Brothers school are looking pretty good. I know that beyond Chaos, some of the guys that train there all train people also like Los Luchas. I'm sure at this juncture they're well mature, that they're probably some of the best trainers out there. So it's not a plug on the Santino Brothers by any means, but definitely the talent that I've seen come out of there is really good. So hats off to them what they've done.
All right, so you got the Top Gun character, and let's see, where are we at right now? Like, how old are you about this point?
Probably 17, 18 is when I was just graduating high school. Still wrestling a bit, not that often.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time period where like the RevPro dojo, we lost a couple of the dojos. I think they got kicked out of the first dojo, through the fire marshal. Second dojo also closed down, and then we switched over to wrestling at some swap meets. I want to say like the Norwalk or La Mirada swap meet. So we weren't running as frequently. At one point, I think Frankensons opened the door for wrestling. So AWS and Revolution Pro was running out of there. My fifth match was actually with Super Dragon, a singles match. And it's funny because like even after training for about a year, I wasn't too comfortable like doing some like some crazy offensive moves. Like I think he wanted me to do like a topo heel and helo over the ring post as like a dive, and like like I said, like I wasn't too crazy at training, like trying different stuff and whatever else. I was more focused on like the fundamentals, and then also like some things will help me stand out in terms of personality and charisma. But wrestling Super Dragon really put me out of my comfort zone in a good way, in terms of doing stuff that I never thought I could do before. One thing about Super Dragon is he'll bring out the best in you, no matter who you are, no matter what your ability is. He will bring out the fight in you. I mean, he may beat the living shit out of you, but at the same time, he'll bring out the fight in you and bring out the best in you.
He was a big Japanese fan, wasn't he?
He was a big Japanese fan, but it's funny because he did like a small tour of all Japan around that time, and like he hated Japan.
Wow.
He hated living. Like he was there for a while, about a month, but like he hated every moment of it, which kind of disheartening at the time because knowing like all of us at RevPro were like, oh yeah, this is kind of like this might be our opportunity to kind of like kind of network in Japan, maybe get some opportunities to go out there, wrestle, and train. But like, yeah, I don't think they ever invited him back after that. Yeah, I think he just, culturally, it wasn't a fit for him. Otherwise, wrestling wise, I'm sure like he loved the wrestling. Like I know one of his favorites was like, that he got me hooked on was like, one match in particular was Otani and Kanemoto. From New Japan, so like he absolutely like he got me more interested in like different types of Japanese wrestling. But yeah, he absolutely hated Japan, which is bewildering to me still to this day.
I mean, considering if you watch like his matches, he was a very early adopter, like on the in America of like that strong style aesthetic that no one else was really doing. Like he was like he went out there and you heard like chops, you heard the whole thing like out there. Like he was really into that whole like his matches when you go back and watch them are very much like early like New Japan, All Japan style where there's a lot of a lot more focus on the hard hitting aspect. So that's
absolutely. It was a hybrid mix too. It wasn't just like that All Japan, New Japan style. It was a hybrid mix of lucha libre as well. That was the interesting thing. Like. So he combined all elements. At the same time, though, he also focused on like the aspect of ring psychology. So his matches actually had like they weren't just like a spot fest. He was actually mindful of like putting it together properly and telling a story. So beyond just like the style like lucha libre, strong style, just like putting on a spot fest, like he actually methodically thought through these things of how to properly structure a match, and like that was a huge learning element for a lot of us too. Like it's nothing you they really teach like you out of school, like the 7 steps to like ring psychology or anything like that. Like it's something that you gradually learn through wrestling. But he was very much more. He was a great wrestling mind from that perspective.
Did he lay out all your guys' matches?
To be honest, a lot of them were. Like some of the stuff, like some of the elements early on, like early in the match, like hold to hold and whatnot, we often didn't plan. But like if there's some intricate spots, obviously we did walk through it before. I would say the good majority of my career was most of the matches were like you obviously can't not plan like some comedy spots. Some were impromptu, at the same time, like some of it requires like some amount of planning.
So you're wrestling. So you're about 18 now. You got the Top Gun character up and running. RevPro is where at this point?
RevPro's at Frankenson's at this point.
Okay.
So running shows maybe monthly, if that. Started, and at that time I was actually I decided to make the jump and go to college in Arizona. So like I said, like wrestling was obviously a huge hobby of mine. At the same time, I wanted to actually pursue have a fallback career, have fallback career options. I was one of the few, if not that, I was probably the only one of the entire RevPro crew who actually went to college. Some of them over time maybe have gone back, but I was the only one at that time. Like we were all about relatively the same age. But I was the only one who decided to actually go pursue school. Well, it did hinder me from continuing training and to be on all the shows. I still flew out maybe once a month to be on shows. And actually, it's funny because I ran in Arizona. I ran into a few wrestling personalities out there too. So Justin Roberts, who's an announcer for AEW, actually I went to the University of Arizona. So he was actually in Tucson at the time. Met up with him. He actually got me a couple opportunities in IZW. IZW was a promotion out there run by the Navajo Warrior, who's done some stints out here as well. He's on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and Championship Wrestling from Arizona. If you haven't seen him, real legend. He's probably wrestled in the last 3 decades or so. I saw him originally on one of the earliest indie shows that I went to with the Freddie Valentine's show that ran out of the old the old Reseda venue where PWG ran.
Oh wow! Okay.
But yeah, Navajo Warrior ran these shows in Arizona, the Impact Zone Wrestling. He brought it occasionally. He would bring in some guys from SoCal, but that gave me an opportunity to continue wrestling, training every now and then as well. And I got to meet some lifelong friends out there. There's a guy that wrestled. He wrestled for RevPro at one point too, but a guy named Cowboy Jack Durango. He's been retired at this point, but I made some lifelong friends there, and it really helped. It really helped to have that some wrestling camaraderie away from home, and build up my network a bit, and step out of my comfort zone. So that was helpful at least. Like I said, every now and then, maybe once a month, I would fly back, do a RevPro show, occasionally do a show in Arizona. So that kept me active in terms of wrestling.
You were still in the gym, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, definitely. No, definitely. I was completely still a student of the game. Didn't step out into whatsoever, I should say. I was still setting up rings at that point too. I think 2 years into training. And I think you can never stop paying your dues in wrestling. So I just kept doing that, kept being a student of the game at the time. I was still passionate about it, wanted to continue. At the same time, I wanted to keep going, have college, have a degree as a backup in case, wrestling went sour at some point. But I just continued that for maybe about 4 years. But in between there, obviously, at the ripe age of 19 is when, PWG started.
So let's get into that then. How does PWG come about?
So it was a combination thing. So at Revolution Pro, obviously with myself, Super Dragon, Excalibur, Disco Machine, we were already established as foundational RevPro students and talent. There was some outside talent from UPW that also took notice to our style and our shows and and just having the opportunity to actually wrestle outside of UPW. That was Scott Loss and Joey Ryan at the time. So they did a few shows with RevPro. RevPro was actually getting some recognition at the time. A lot of thanks to XPW, who showcased Rising Sun and Super Dragon on one of the shows. So that stood out with SoCal talent. Got some notoriety and recognition with SoCal Uncensored. And people started to come into shows. So we had one big show where Kiku Taro came out. He was wrestling at Evason at the time. He came out with Kushinbo Kamen from Japan. And this show actually it drew about 500 people.
Wow.
Which is amazing. I teamed with Kushinbo against Human Tornado and Evason on that show, and the main event was Baby Slim against Super Dragon. But we started getting a decent draw. Had a venue there that run by Frank and Sons that we could potentially see run pretty cheap.
Mm-hmm.
We enjoyed wrestling at RevPro, by all means. There was a lot of other shows as well. We kind of felt though we needed to what's similar to the XPW model. Let's integrate local talent, good local talent. Let's blend them with a couple of outsiders in there. Ultimately, I think Excalibur did even a recent interview with on Jericho's podcast. A lot of it was driven by some of these indie tournaments at the time.
Mm-hmm. So the Super 8 and the
Super 8, King of the Indies, run by Roland Alexander,
Yeah.
AEW. Even Revolution Pro did this Revolution J tournament, which is our J Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought about we don't have to have let's kind of do that, but then just have a regular show recurring. Bringing in some outside talent, every show, maybe at a minimal extent, and then blend them with the local talent. So we came up with a $2,700 investment amongst the six of us. I actually, to be honest, I wasn't even part of the original discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say Tommy Williams, who wrestled as Funky Billy Kim,
Mm-hmm.
who actually wrestled John Cena in his first match at UPW.
Prototype.
So he wrestled Prototype. He wrestled John Cena. This guy Tommy Williams. So I think he was part of the original dialogue, but he didn't decide to get involved in the investment. So I got pulled in as well, and I was gung ho about it at the time. Being 19, doing something new. I had no constraints whatsoever. So we came up with a $2,700 investment amongst the six of us. Low capital investment, not very risky.
Mm-hmm.
Worth at all. Frankenstein's was allowing us to run fairly cheap at the time.
Yeah.
I think the biggest cost to us for the first show was obviously bringing in AJ. It's funny because I picked up AJ at the Long Beach airport at the time. Even then I was still a huge mark.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool to meet him and stuff. And I drove him over to the hotel as well. And I think when I was driving from Long Beach to Anaheim, where he was staying, I think I drove around for 2 hours because I had no idea where I was going at the time.
Mind you, MapQuest, none of this shit exists at that time.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's relying on what was those physical maps or something like that. But I just remember that story, and I remember him getting really impatient at the time. Such a cool guy. Don't get me wrong. No, by all means, he was such a sweetheart. Thereafter, I think he was getting a little bit frustrated. It was taking 2 hours to go just 10 miles away. So
yeah.
It was funny from the start. But yeah, we did that. So we did the first show at Frankenstein's. I want to say the first. So I was involved in the first match. I want to say, I don't know if you've seen it. I hope not. I think it's the first show is actually very hard to come by from what I hear. I hear even on eBay people are selling it for triple digits. Pretty incredible to think of.
I've seen the first show, but it's been about a good decade since I've actually watched it.
Yeah, the first match wasn't actually I don't think it was planned as advertised.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up being myself, Charles Mercury, and Zotri against Ryan Drago, Cerro Del Rey, or it was a mix of everything. Cerro Del Rey and I can't remember who else in the match now, but it was a clusterfuck. To be honest, super bad. It was just a complete clusterfuck. Partially my fault. I don't know, some of the planning that went into it, just wasn't thinking right.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was some outside factors of stress too in terms of running a show and wrestling on it at the same time. Kind of carried with a lot of us during our time at PWG.
Well, if you don't mind me jumping in right here, do you remember how you guys broke down that first show? Who was booking, who was planning, who booked talent? Do you remember how any of that went about?
Throughout the duration of PWG, it was mostly Super Dragon, Joey Ryan, booking the talent
Mm-hmm.
and like, securing the talent, otherwise contacting them and whatever else. Dragon, even to this day, books a lot of the shows. Excalibur obviously has been involved in, commentary and a lot of like, the graphic design, the posters, the cover art for the DVDs, Disco Machine likewise, very much involved in that. Scott and myself were actually very much the couriers for the show. So we would more often than not be the ones to like pick up wrestlers from the airport, get them to the venues. I would do a lot of miscellaneous stuff. So I think for the first few shows, I would say I think one PWG show I single-handedly set up the ring myself.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was still, I was 19. I was still paying dues at the time too. I was the youngest amongst the group by far and away. Even when it came to training, I was a young boy still. So a lot of the stuff that I did was like, picking up people from the airport, even for a long while actually, I was housing guys at my, my parents' house.
I've been where I have been. That place
Yeah.
is holy. We'll talk. I think we could talk about that a little later. But yeah, you held some fun parties at that place.
That if only those walls could talk, they would absolutely have a story.
I tell everyone my biggest claim to fame is seeing El Generico, who now everyone knows as Sami Zayn, streak everyone in that at one of your parties. Like just one night, just all of a sudden it was just we hear this and we look over, and I want to say Steen or Chris Hero was like, "Is that Generico?" And then you just see this white flash just go right by you. He stops, turns, does the woo, and then runs outside. And you're just like, all right, well, that happened.
Don't tell people how you live.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But no, you're that back area at your house, which was like a house in of itself, was it was insane. And you guys partied hard back there too. Nothing that would get anybody in trouble, by the way. These were just like, if you saw, like when Top Gun was gracious to invite me and a few friends to both his birthday party and a New Year's party, and when we got there, we were just like, oh man, like all these wrestlers and stuff, like we're hanging out, and then you realize like when they're not like on duty, we just sat there and was like, this is exactly what we do with all of our friends. Like it was exactly that. It's like everyone hangs out, bullshits, and has a few drinks, and everyone's just having a good time.
I don't think. Yeah, I mean, we weren't going like overboard. Like you probably didn't even see like drugs or anything like that.
There's nothing there. No, not even that. Everyone was playing. We were playing PlayStation 2, and like the biggest thing I remember from one of your parties, I forgot the gentleman's name. He kind of reminded me of Matt Stone, and he was your gopher at the time. He was the guy that you sent to pick up everybody. And I remember him sitting on the couch in that house, and Chris Hero and I want to say it might have been Bosch were watching a clip online, and it was when Brock Lesnar dropped Bob Holly, when Bob Holly sandbagged him, and Bob Holly broke his neck. And I remember like just kind of like standing, because it's like, I don't know these guys. I don't want to be like the asshole, like jumping in and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of watching this, and this dude just kind of goes on. It's like, well, Bob had it coming. And I just remember Chris Hero turns and gives this dude the dirtiest look I've ever seen a human being give another human being. And he's just like, so you're saying that Bob Holly deserved to get his neck broken? Is that like, he just went off like a Karen almost. He's like, are you fucking kidding me? Is that what's going on? And the guy's like, well, hey, he brought it on himself. Chris Hero then gets up, flips your coffee table, and then storms out. And I remember Tornado going, did someone seriously piss off Chris Hero, the nicest guy in wrestling? And it was like, yes, that's exactly what happened. It's like, that's...
Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, I won't mention the name, but I do remember that. I do remember that moment. Yeah, there was even another time where I think Daniel Bryan had lectured him in regards. The individual felt that when I had wrestled like Samoa Joe,
Mm-hmm.
he thought it was just too unrealistic in terms of like he should from a wrestling like he should be able to just pin me with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He went into like this huge argument with Daniel Bryan at the time, like. As Daniel Bryan was actually defending me in terms of like he can use leverage on a pin to actually kick out of it, whatever else, all these things. It just yeah, he was just the guy was just unqualified at the time to like bring this up with wrestlers. But it's okay to express your opinion like that. But I think some guys obviously took major offense to some of the things.
Okay, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, this same guy, by the way. Before we left your birthday party, because I think everyone was in town for a PWG show. Like it was a Friday night, and I think you guys had a Saturday night show. And we're getting ready. My buddies and I are getting ready to leave. Like we kind of kept low key, just like, oh, this was fun. Talked. Everyone was super nice. This guy runs out. He's like, hey, you guys like all this shit, right? I'm like, yeah. Why? He's like, would one of you want to go pick up Colt Cabana from LAX tomorrow and bring him here? And my best friend, who's just like, he sees, won't say no to any opportunity for a wrestler. He's just like, fuck yeah, we're going to pick him up. And I turned to him, I'm like, you don't have a car. He's like, you got a car? I'm like, I got a car with a busted fucking heating system. He's like, well, just borrow your mom's. I'm like, okay. So, sure as shit, we picked up Colt. And I remember driving Colt back, and he's just like, who the fuck are you guys? And we're just like, we were asked to do a favor, man. Like, that's cool. And he's just like, so, he's being Colt. He's like, just, hey, tell me a little bit about this place and stuff like that. And I'm trying to, not sound like a huge mark or anything like that. And I'm just, we're just trying to make small conversations. And finally, he's like, well, I wrestled Masato Tanaka the other. I'm like, oh, finally, something I could talk to him about. So I picked his brain about wrestling Masato. And we finally dropped him off. I remember he went to get his bags out of the back of the car. And mind you, I had borrowed my mom's car. My mom had a change of clothes because she went from her job to an event later that like 2 nights before that, and she left her shoes in there. So Colt reaches in, he pulls out these 2 high heels. He's like, anything else you should tell me about you? I'm just like, oh no, it's my mom's car. It's like, look, man, I ain't judging. I'm just like, if you're into some stuff, I want to hear a story. She's like, no, nothing like that.
That definitely sounds like Colt.
Yeah. Which
that's the type of stuff.
I think that's a good time. Let's bring up your match with Colt, because I think that's one of your most absolute famous matches. I believe it was at Three Mendes.
Absolutely, yeah. So that was actually prior to the time I took a little bit of a sabbatical from wrestling. I think there was a 6 months period where I went to India to work and live.
Mm-hmm.
This was after college, but that was the last match I had prior to then. I was really obviously very excited. Even to this day, I think Colt even remembers it when I ran to him recently. So we're obviously both fond of the match. I'll be honest. I need to go back. I just got. I never saw the DVD. I've seen clips of the match.
Mm-hmm.
I just recently subscribed to the High Spots Wrestling Network,
Mm-hmm.
and I've gone back and watched a few matches. I'm trying to do it chronologically, but I've not got to that point yet to watch the full match. But I remember the match fondly. I remember it being probably a peak time of my wrestling career. Probably probably a period of time where my character was the most developed. I had just, I think at that point the exact same time I had just got done with a small tour of Europe. So I went and wrestled. I went and wrestled the second time in England, and had done like some film festival match for Lucha Room in Holland as well. So I would say I was at kind of like a peak of my wrestling career at that point. So it was, I was actually very grateful to have I didn't get many singles matches with some cool wrestlers in PWG. So that was one of the few that I was really grateful to have.
Well, I think I remember watching that match and laughing my ass off. I remember going on, by that point, I'm on forums too. And it was talked about as one of the absolute greatest comedy matches of not only that year, but people were trying to go back, when was the last time you saw anybody do anything like this? That wasn't just It wasn't just like, goofing with it. Like there was like thought, and it was almost like an SNL skit in its execution, to the point where you guys go to the back and you're fighting, and you hear like God, you're making your noises. You're the because you develop these like grunts that you would do during your matches. Just that like you would do, like you're doing that stuff, and then you hear Colt going, "Oh God help me, God!" Like, and then the beauty of the way that it was shot. There's John, the ring announcer, and I think it's Knox, the ref, and they peek behind the curtain and they look at each other like, "What the fuck is this?" And you open up and you're simulating you're doing some blow off a saucer, while Colt is sipping tea off this antique set, to the point where Rick gets fed up with you two and drags you back to the ring by the ear. It is hands down one of the greatest moments in professional wrestling, in my opinion, because it's so brilliantly executed.
I'm humbled. Thank you so much. I think I would say a lot of that match actually was a lot of it's improvised. Sometimes what you say, or like some of the action sometimes is just based on feel.
Mm-hmm.
Even like when you think about like a comedy match, it's not all like always planned. There's some elements sometimes that pop in your head during the time of the match, like spawn creativity. I think another match like that was like my match with El Generico. Like we only planned like a couple of spots, and the rest of it was like a lot of it was improv. Just to see like just on the fly kind of thinking, not like trying to be funny.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like just just throwing stuff out there, seeing how people react.
But you're two dudes. You guys have a rapport. You guys have a similar sense of humor. So it's like when you find that good friend that gets you, like, and you guys can just spitball off each other. You guys were doing that in the ring. I mean, you have, is Generico the guy you've had the most like singles matches with?
No, actually, that was the only. So I only wrestled him once at Pro Wrestling War. I was in the ring with him a couple times at PWG, but I only had that one singles match with him at Wrestling War. I never really did a lot of singles matches in PWG and outside. A lot of them are tag matches. I think at RevPro I probably wrestled Chris Bosch a handful of times, even towards the tail end in singles matches. Scorpio Sky actually wrestled in his first professional match when he was Guy Nero Thresh. But like throughout my career, I never really had an abundant amount of singles matches.
That's good.
Yeah, I was mostly yeah.
Oh no, I'm sorry. So let's I've kind of jumped ahead a little bit. Let's jump back. So you guys are first show up and runs, PWG. Was it? I'm assuming it was a success at the time.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say it was a huge financial success. Like we didn't draw like a huge crowd by any means, or like but we were able to drive enough capital to run another show, continue running at least. Now I can't tell you that some of us were actually still kind of investing money throughout the period of time, or not. I won't disclose that information, but yeah, we were doing enough. We had enough capital to actually run for the next few shows or so. It wasn't until like I want to say a few shows down the road that High Spots became a partner in terms of like distributing some of the DVDs and even like sponsoring on the show. So that helped a lot in terms of continuing to run and actually bringing in some more outside talent. We started building a name for ourselves, quite a bit when we started. Like I think throughout we ran at Frankenstein's the first show. Then we're kind of going back and forth between different venues thereafter.
You did a few in Santa Ana. That's where I first heard of you guys, right?
Yeah, so the Elks Lodge. Elks Lodge was a decent venue. We just couldn't draw there. For some reason, the county just never really drew for us. So we didn't really even it was a good venue actually. It had like a good setup and everything. Lighting wasn't that great in terms of production and whatnot, but like otherwise, we didn't draw well. And then we started relocating our shows more towards like Los Angeles and Hollywood area. That's when the Sweatbox.
Oh, so that's when it came in.
Yeah, it's a sweatbox.
the Los Feliz
Home
Jewish.
quite a
It was the Jewish center, right?
Yeah, Jewish Community Center
Jewish community.
in Los Feliz. Yeah, so one of my favorite. The parking was awful. The parking
Oh, yeah.
situation was,
I heard
I'm sure a lot of
I was at a
pain, but
lot of those shows. I got accosted by furries at that show, at one of those shows too.
Listen, that was the intriguing part. That area was just like that was the heart of Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Like you ran into some very eccentric people. I mean, we had at the time you wouldn't even know it, but we had kind of like some movie stars filtering through there every now and then. Like I know Sid Haig
Mm-hmm.
had gone to like one or two shows at the time. I'm sure like multiple celebrity encounters are probably countless at this place just because like it was in the heart of Hollywood, which is really cool. I think definitely when I look back at like all the places I've wrestled, and a lot of people will say like the Reseda venue stands out to them, but the Jewish Community Center, the Sweatbox, I think stands out the most to me.
So yeah, to me too. Like those were the I think I would say that was the peak of when you guys had figured out what you guys were. Like here's the PWG identity. Like you guys were putting on awesome matches, but at the same time you kind of were you were tongue in cheek. You didn't take yourself too seriously. You were the antithesis to everything the Ring of Honor was at the time. And I think that in itself is what drew a ton of people. And at that, but it was a sweatbox, but there was such that gym had such an atmosphere to it that like you just like I couldn't see it doing anywhere else. Like I went to a bunch of the Reseda shows, and I know a lot of people, for them that's their PWG, but for me it was the sweatbox because it was like you're standing there. And kind of like you're in there like by hour 4, you're like, fuck, I need some air, but it almost made you feel like you kind of earned what you saw at the same time too. Like you were in there kind of going through it all along with it. Like the acoustics in there were fantastic. You guys put on some hell of a match. There was the one that pops to mind right now is Super Dragon and Steen. With Super Dragon doing that stomp to Steen's head with the board.
The guerrilla warfare, right?
Yeah, the guerrilla warfare match.
I remember that distinctly because Kevin Steen came to the back after and he had like a bunch of thumbtacks in his head, and we dubbed him the name Frankenstein after that.
But that right there, that center, I think for me, I think for a lot of people too, that is that's the golden age of the original run of it. I mean, all you guys were there. Everybody was. It was still more local talent with the sprinkling of talent being brought in. I mean, to be fair, I think a couple of those guys getting hired by TNA helped a lot. I mean, there was one show we actually got turned away from because you guys were completely sold out.
Oh wow! Yeah, I think back then the tickets were a little more easy to come by. At least we'd accept a lot of walk-ups.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure at some points like we oversold it, or we had some constraints in terms of how many tickets we could sell. But I think over time it's pretty amazing just to see like now it's almost next to impossible to get tickets.
Oh.
Or at least it was at like the American Legion Hall.
Yeah. Now I've talked to a few people that have like, I waited 9 hours outside the American Legion halls just so I can get in. I'm like, wow, really? Like, it kind of makes me wistful. I've been going to Comic-Con since I was 10. So there was a point where you could just show up the day of and like, here's $25, go ahead, go on in. It makes me kind of sound like an old timer. I'm like, yeah, we would walk up and, you're not getting front row, but fuck, man, there was not a bad seat in that house. And considering where you guys took the product too, it's like, you guys made sure like everybody got something out of that.
I think what helped too at the time is like a lot of us were about like the same age. I had mentioned this before. Even some of the outsiders like Generico and Steen, all relatively about the same age as a lot of the local talent like Bosch, Quicksilver, Sky, myself. Maybe just a disparity of like 3 or 4 years or so amongst others. But a lot of us, were the same age. We were I would say most of us were in our prime
mm-hmm.
at the times. It just, we ran with it. Like the camaraderie was there and we just had fun. We just went out there and had fun. no one like. There's obviously some people like they wanted to go out and have like 5-star matches, but at the same time at the end of the day they just wanted to have fun. I think that's what made it successful. I think that's why people wanted to wrestle like at PWG. That's why people love to come out and just they didn't always have to do a serious match.
Mm-hmm.
They could just like a little dance in between like in between a spot or something, just like get a laugh out of the crowd. It was very much lighthearted. And at the same time, like I talk about like us being like we're on the same age. We're still relatively young in wrestling, so there's guys in the locker room like Christopher Daniels or AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, who have like experience over us. Even CM Punk was around for a little bit, so it was great to have these kind of guys in the locker room. And in fact, I'd say I took it for granted. Even like guys like Daniel Bryan, Chris Hero. I wasn't as much of a student of the game I'm kind of the latter half of PWG.
Mm-hmm.
I had opportunities to even some of these guys would reach out like I think Daniel Bryan has suggested at one point like I think he was training at the New Japan Dojo. He was living in SoCal for a while to like come on down, do some sessions with him, get in the ring and roll around, and like I never seized the day and took that opportunity. Likewise with like Chris Hero. Every now and then, like, these guys would always stay at my house too, at my parents' house, and I never seized that opportunity to like to really learn from these guys as much as I should have. I did listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
We would all listen to them. Christopher Daniels had some tips for you after your match. You'd listen. You'd obviously with someone with that much experience, to be in the same locker room with you is a gift. So you never want to take that for granted. At the same time, if you have opportunities like someone at that level invites you to go train with them, or even invites you to like travel. I think at some points like El Generico later on, asked me like, you should like travel around with me, like different places that I'm going and do like in Japan and do some shows. And I never work in school got in the way obviously as a factor. At the same time, I let these opportunities kind of go away, fizzle. So that's some regrets that I had in wrestling, in terms of not being as much in tune to it and invested in it as I should have been.
The skits, where did those start from?
Skits started really early. So even like, I want to say even on our first show, we had a few. We used to do this stuff at RevPro as well. And people enjoyed them. There's even like an old RevPro footage of like when I talked about the match with Ebasan, who's now Kiki Utaro, and Kuishimbo. So we did like a little bit of a skit before the match, prior to the show, and like that's still on YouTube, believe it or not, from like how many 16 years back or so. But yeah, the skits were something like we carried over from the start, and I think that also helped us differentiate ourselves. Adding a little bit of not taking like no one wants to hear a guy like with this promo after promo something serious. They want to see something like throwing a little humor. At the time, honestly, we were a little over the top. To be honest, and at some point I'm gonna have to go back and apologize to some people. I should have. I mean, yeah, I regret a lot of the decisions and rhetoric that we used at the time. At the same time, no one really. It's interesting just to see like crowd reaction. Like imagine that stuff happening now.
Oh yeah,
we get eaten. We would get eaten alive.
You guys would be torn. You could be torn, limb from limb. But again, that the crowd back then ate it up because we didn't. It was mostly dudes for the most part, and we're all juveniles at heart. So it's like, yes, this is exact. This all speaks to us. I mean, the bit. I mean, to kind of circle around this. When did you start incorporating the Hunter S. Thompson aspect of your character into your character? I mean,
I think that so it was a slow evolution of the character. So I think like I mentioned, a lot of my character was a parody on wrestling. It started with a parody of steroids in wrestling, then it kind of evolved in like drugs in wrestling. So like it started coming out like powder on my nose and everything else. I wanted to kind of differentiate a bit. Like I was a big fan of, I was obviously a big fan of Hunter S. Thompson, like the Fear and Loathing movie. I thought like, kind of spawned like, we took a trip out to Vegas, a bunch of us from PWG at one point when I turned 21. And like I bought like this Las Vegas hat, like the visor, and like it was like kind of. I thought like I think I want to say it was like Dina Winwood or someone that kind of inspired me to like kind of run with it. And I didn't do too much to emphasize like emphasis on the Hunter S. Thompson character, but I just came out with like the visor,
it was beautifully integrated into everything, because you look at when you at that point, I think at your peak of Top Gunness, as I'll refer to it as. You had combined like 4 or 5 different things at once, but you weren't this walking mishmash. It all worked, and like you could see the Thompson, because I think for a while you were coming out with the you had the visor, you had the glasses, and you had the cigarette extender, the big ass filter, and for a while I think you were also talking through it too. Like I want to say you wrestled one match with that thing in your mouth, but at the same time you're coming out in a fucking leotard that's about as skin tone as you can get, with a giant pubic patch at the bottom too. So it's definitely something.
The story behind that too.
Okay, let's hear it.
So I think at one point we were like, we're going. There's a lot of diatribe in the PW locker room, or like how wrestlers like Greek wrestlers used to wrestle in the nude. I want to say it was suggested by either AJ or Daniel Bryan at the time, wrestling as Bryan Danielson, that I wrestle in the nude, just based on my character like being so crazy. So that was the next best thing I could think of. The nude singlet, the crotch fur was actually my mom's idea.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom was the one that actually sewed on the crotch fur to the singlet. God bless her. Yeah. My mom was actually mom's Mama Talwar is actually a character in PWG history. So she was running the concession stand for quite some time. Probably more over and more well known than I ever been and never will be.
There's still old forum posts that speak of her highly, and almost mythically too.
Yeah, it's right. But she was the one that came up with the crotch fur idea. I mean, obviously, the idea spawned from our discussion in the locker room. I can't remember exactly who said I should wrestle naked, and that just kind of drove it from there.
Because it's great when you come out, like you start screaming at the audience, you scream at the ring, and then everyone kind of looks. You're just like, is he nude? And then you see the pube patch. You're like, Jesus Christ. But it's so fucking genius. It's I was going back to prep for this last night. I had completely forgot about the pube patch. I was rolling. It's like 2 a.m, and I'm just laughing my ass off, because I'm just like, yes, this is exactly why I used to love going to those shows, because this is the kind of shit you would see that no one in their, I don't want to say in their right mind, but no one in their sane mind today would do, because you couldn't get away with it. There'd be such backlash about it that you'd be run out of town on a pole.
Yeah, I mean, like I would even be skeptical of like the blow up doll and how people would react to that nowadays. Or even the fact that the blow up doll's name was like my entourage's name, like Tits McGee. Oh my! I don't know how what kind of response we receive in this day and age.
To be fair, Kenny Omega did kind of put the blow-up doll on the map, though, for the rest of the world. I think he saw what you were doing and then just ran with it in Japan.
I saw that. I saw a YouTube clip at one point. No, he did a great job at selling for it, and I was really excited to see that at the time. I obviously don't think he stole the idea from me.
Oh, I'm not saying he stole it, but I say that he was inspired, and he ran with it.
I'd love to think that. The fact that the idea of Kenny Omega even seeing any of my stuff is inspiring,
So, back to the side, from the sidestep, the skits. I think you're involved in at least 2 very famous ones that go around. They are still around on the internet today, and kind of epitomize the PWG like mentality. There was the first one I want to say it was either Excalibur or Steen. It was you guys were in the bathroom, and you were pretending to do coke because at this point you had your Thompson character going a little bit in there, and I want to say it was a giant. It was a guy in a bear suit.
Yeah. So it was one of the guys that does ring crew. Name was Evan. He was doing ring crew with us. A good friend of ours, doing ring crew for a while. So he just he came with a bear suit one show. I actually accompanied me to the ring, and then I had this crazy idea after let's just do a promo in the bathroom. So Dina Wynn would show me this. It's really not funny now thinking about it, but it was this it was a bathroom training for anyone with a mentally handicapped. It was on YouTube. So this guy on one of the clips, this guy was standing in a stall, urinating, and started massaging the guy next to him. So we thought okay, let's kind of mimic this and run with it, see what we can do, and so that kind of inspired that skit. So we had Evan dressed as a bear in the bathroom. This was all impromptu, by the way. Nothing coordinated or planned whatsoever. Just like a lot of our skits, which is kind of run with it and see how crazy it gets. Obviously, that's one skit. I actually had that on my YouTube channel for a while. I deleted it. It's still out there on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more tricky. I mean, you can find it. Obviously, you search my name on YouTube, you'll find it. But you can hear me after distinctly say "Oh, that was the craziest thing I've ever done in my life." What the fuck?
Well, I mean, it's you're watching and you're like, what the fuck is going on? And I think I want to say it was either Quicksilver or Excalibur that literally comes in at the end. It's it says it for you, the viewer. It's what the fuck am I looking at?
Yeah, no, it was just this obscurity. Obviously when people go back and they see that, they're and if they don't know who I am, if let's say anyone's not even a wrestling fan, they see that, they're gonna be what the fuck did I just watch? So I'm at least within small circles, I know that video scene. I know that one that's the one that's still out there that gets I think more views is the one with Kevin Steen.
The Chipotle one, right?
Knocks over the Chipotle bag, and I go ape shit. Again, another thing that was kind of impromptu. And we just kind of, I think a lot of it was inspired by Chris Farley. One of the SNL skits where he just he goes ape shit.
Oh yeah, the Folgers Colombian Crystals one, right?
On a bit. Yeah. So it's kind of inspired by that. Some SNL skits, combination of, just life in general, around us is funny at the time for us. So we were very much passionate about comedy. Just finding humor in anything and everything around us, if possible.
And those are all pretty much one and dones. When you were
what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Oh, I mean, pretty much you guys would just turn the camera on, run, and then once it was done, that was the final product. No, you didn't.
Yep. We never did. Yeah, we never did the retakes. Even there was a skit where Dina Wynn interviewed the Briscoes, and you could not understand a single word they were saying. He just kind of ran with it. He was wearing a panda mask at the time. I don't know if it's available on YouTube or not. But yeah, we would never do dual takes or anything, or it was never it wasn't an official production or anything. We just kind of went with it and ran with it. Everything was filmed only once.
So what was your what was your best for you? Your best moment there in your full run?
In PWG itself. I think some of the matches that stand out to me the most. Obviously, one of the ones with Colt Cabana, the singles match. I think another one that getting to wrestle Stalker Ishikawa was big for me. I had watched him for a long time within Dragon Gate itself and Toryumon, and just was a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of comedy wrestling in general, so getting to wrestle as legends like that is amazing. Getting the opportunity to wrestle Samoa Joe was also huge for me. just like just a consummate professional. Like, I didn't expect that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he would just go in there and just beat the shit out of me, recklessly, if that. But he didn't have that reputation at the time. At the same time, like, I wasn't sure what to expect, but he was just so professional. He even let me get in like the Chipotle, and he let me get in some other offense as well, and just was highly complimentary after the match. So I'd say amongst one of my favorite matches in my career, at least that one, even in and outside of PWG.
And on that same note, what would be, outside PWG? What were some of your highlights?
I was the last ever Revolution Pro heavyweight champion, so I beat Chris Bosch in the final show of RevPro, the very last show. I'm not sure if the title went somewhere. Like, I never had a physical title.
Mm-hmm.
It was like it was a WCW belt, replica belt.
A great thing that never really the backyards and the indies had that going on. Once those belts got out, it was like, all right, cool. Yeah, we're not spending $1,400. Let's go spend $400 on eBay, and we'll just slap a sticker over it.
Well, yeah, the original title of RevPro, the Mexican Lucha Libre heavyweight title, was actually it was a paper mache belt,
mm-hmm.
and it wasn't that bad. It was this guy. He would do like I think some type of carpentry at like the old dojo, and he put together like some paper mache mask,
mm-hmm.
like the original guy in mask. He put together the belt. That same belt actually, Blue Meanie had wrestled Matt Sinister at one of the RevPro shows, one of the car consumer shows, and went over to win the title. And we never saw that belt again. So I want to say that Blue Meanie still has the original RevPro title. But it wasn't until maybe 3 or 4 years later where I actually won the belt for the last show. And that's definitely one of the hugest moments of my career. And just a testament to Ron Rivera, American Wild Child, for putting me over like that. It meant a lot to me. That was at a time, I think 2003 or 2004, when I was wrestling both at PWG and RevPro. But it meant a lot to me to win the belt at a place where I started, where I was homegrown. And it was I feel it was one of my best matches. I never really intended to have a 5-star match or whatever else, but this was a match where I took it pretty seriously. It wasn't all comedic elements by any means, and then being in there with Bosch, makes those type of things easy.
Do you still talk to those guys?
Chris Bosch he came out recently, visited. He lives in Texas, and actually owns a ranch and it's horses, from what I know.
Oh wow!
But he came out recently and visited Dean Winwood. I talked to him briefly on the phone, but I don't talk to him that often. I'm more in contact with guys like Dean Winwood quite often. Still keep in touch with Quicksilver quite a bit as well. Scorpio Sky. Even a lot of the PWG crew went to my wedding. A lot of the PWG, at least with the exception of Super Dragon, I think Joey Ryan was traveling around too at the time, so he wasn't able to make it. But a lot of those guys went to my wedding. Excalibur actually even nearly choked me out at my wedding, believe it or not, in a good way.
Yeah,
it was in a loving way, but it was near to the point of passing out. But nonetheless, it was a loving choke.
So, when do you start winding down?
It was around 2007. So I mentioned that I took that sabbatical, and after I graduated college, I was kind of deciding after I graduated from college, and it was 2006, whether am I gonna put everything into wrestling full time, or am I gonna just continue to pursue a fallback career? I actually went with the safety net of having the fallback career and pursuing the opportunity to actually work and live in India, which is pretty cool,
Mm-hmm.
To have that experience. I was still, I was even going over there. I was still passionate about wrestling. The other alternative after I graduated school was okay, I was thinking about actually moving to Japan for a good period of time and actually training out there in wrestling. I had an open invite, obviously, from Kikutaro, who was living out in Osaka at the time, wrestling for Osaka Pro. a few of my colleagues like Disco Machine, Mr. Excitement, Scott Lost, Scorpio Sky had all they did some stints out there, going out for a month at a time. So I was thinking about doing the same thing. I would say around the time my heart was still into it, but at the same time I didn't feel I was as talented as some of the other guys that were out there. I didn't feel like I felt like I was pretty happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was actually pretty complacent with how far I had gone in wrestling. I think the only things I was missing at the time was I hadn't wrestled in Japan. I had no ambitions or goals to go to WWE. I didn't even have ambitions to do it, make it a full-time thing. I just had I had fun with it, whatever I was doing. And I felt like I did more to myself in wrestling than I ever thought I would have done going into it. So I decided to go the fallback career route, and honestly very happy that I did that. I mentioned I think you had mentioned on Twitter that I became a doctor. It's funny because with my Indian surname, you would kind of a stereotypical thing. But I went beyond stereotypes, and I got into how people stereotype Indians, and I got into IT, of course.
Because that's not a stereotype at all with that culture.
Not at all.
Not one bit. Well, I only heard through the grapevine that you had gone back to school. I think I might have been one of the last PWG shows I went to. I think I even asked, I think it was Scorpio Sky of all people. I'm just like, have you heard from Top Gun? He's like, I think he went to school to become a doctor. So that's exactly where my knowledge was. we from the time that you and I would talk for I think a good 6-month period. From what I knew of you, you were very much still pursuing outside interests. So I just kind of put 2 and 2 together in my head, and I just, when I talk to people about the glory days of PWG, you get brought up a lot. They're like, man, what the hell happened to Top Gun? Because you're that guy that stood out. A lot of people fucking love you, man. And I'm just like, last I heard, he went to school, and I think he's a doctor now, so he's doing probably better than any of us standing around here in a supermarket right now. So.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to have made that decision. At the same time, I lost out on a lot of opportunities in wrestling. During that time, Wrestling Society X was running.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my friends and counterparts got involved in that. And actually, I was supposed to potentially be involved in season 2 of that, running with a Hunter S. Thompson character alongside Dina Winwood.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I missed out on, and also so Lucha Vavoom ran with this Dirty Sanchez character. I don't know if you're familiar with Lucha Vavoom or that character in general.
I'm familiar with Lucha Vavoom.
Okay, so they have this Dirty Sanchez character. So very similar gear.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have the nude singlet with the crotch fur is but that was I actually wrestled with the original Dirty Sanchez in Amsterdam. It was a film festival show shortly before I left to India, promoting Nacho Libre.
Mm-hmm.
It was in front of a crowd of 3,000 people, but none of them made a single sound while we were wrestling. It was probably one of the greatest things, moments ever in my wrestling career. Just how obscure it actually was and weird.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of presented the story of my career overall. And I had the nude singlet on at the time with the crotch fur. I was doing all kinds of weird things. So, but thereafter, and I wrestled as the character Dirty Sanchez on that show. But thereafter, they took the gimmick and character and used it for on Lucha Vavoom. I want to say that Angel from XPW actually does the gimmick now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I kind of lost out on that opportunity as well.
Mm-hmm.
As well as obviously continuing on PWG shows. I came back and wrestled on PWG shows, and I did a few matches, a few shows, but it just didn't feel the same in terms of my passion
mm-hmm.
and drive, and I thought at one point, and it was around late 2007, I had just wrestled running on PWG, and I thought to myself there's a lot of guys that are hungry for this opportunity. It's kind of time to pass the torch along. I had been doing that about since 2000. So it was like 4 or 5 years at that point with PWG. I didn't feel like, the character wasn't as over as, it was at like the JCC or like, at that point. I felt it was a little bit dry. So I just, I kind of stepped away. And, I don't regret it by any means. I do miss wrestling. But I've done all right for myself outside of wrestling, and there's no regrets at all. There's a couple things that I mentioned is, wrestling Japan. I never got the opportunity to. At the same time, I'm still under 40. There's still time.
Yeah.
Never say never. As long as I, don't die in the ring. I'm okay with doing a couple matches here and there from time to time. Even after PWG.
What was the last time I'm sorry, but when was the last time you stepped into the ring?
It was 2013, actually. So I did a match with this local promotion called LAW. It was Disco Machine and myself. So this was also Disco Machine's very last match, too, against a guy named Todd Chandler, local talent, and then also Jarek Matthews, who's on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. It was a tag match. It's actually on YouTube right now as well. You can check it on there. We didn't do too much in that match, and something actually I'm very proud of. It was 7 years back, so it's amazing how time flies. But I haven't done anything since then. I've been to only a couple shows just to peek my head in. I'm getting more into it, like on Twitter. Just kind of reminiscing about like the history, like what I've been involved with, and like even just watching current wrestling. It's exciting, like what's out there. There's so much talent, so many good shows. It's almost overwhelming in comparison to like what we used to have, where I would have to go like to Japanese tape stores in Little Tokyo to actually rent good wrestling on VHS. Now it's accessible via YouTube and all these like streaming avenues, which is blows my mind. So never. I think for any fans or wrestlers out there, I never take that for granted. What you have in front of you.
Well, to dive into the fan part of it, what's getting your attention these days? What are you enjoying?
Obviously a lot of whatever's happening in AEW. I just enjoy seeing the people I kind of grew up with succeed. Like just seeing Scorpio Sky and the level he's at right now, just makes me so proud to see that. Just knowing that I wrestled him in his first professional match, to seeing what he's done today. He's had his ups and downs in wrestling. He's even contemplating quitting, and he's gone back and forth with it for a long time. But he finally found his way, and I'm so proud of him that he's been able to achieve that. Even just seeing guys in, I can still enjoy WWE. I know a lot of people can't out there, but I recently went to a Quicksilver, Dino Winwood, myself. We caught up with Sami Zayn back in December of last year. He was at a local house show here at Staples Center, and just catching up with him and reminiscing, and it was like no lost time whatsoever. I obviously enjoy I still watch. I watch WWE just to see him, see Steen, see Bryan wrestle. I was really a big fan of that recent match with I'll call him Claudio still. He's still Claudio to me.
Yeah.
Claudio and Bryan go at it in the singles match on Friday Night SmackDown in the empty arena. That set me back a bit. That was pretty amazing to see. And I'm hoping just WWE lets these guys just go out and have these scruffy matches, these scruffy singles matches. This ran now, especially now this time. That'd be it's good for TV.
Yeah.
It's good for the fans to see. So I'm hoping they do more of that now. There's a lot of potential, 5-star matches in the making with WWE. There's so much talent there right now.
It's insane. It's almost like WCW towards the end. Remember they had that ridiculously sized roster for I think it was from 99 to 2000. They had something like 60 or 70 just contracted workers that would show up on both Thunder and Raw and Nitro, and that was almost unheard of at the time. And now, between the NXTs, Raw, SmackDown, God only knows whatever else they got going on, they are just wallowing in talent. And it is a little frustrating when you see them, regulate So I get it. They're on TV. You have to. There's formats to follow, but it's, at the same time, it's you see like NXT and the stuff they put on, and then when everyone goes to the main roster, you're just like, huh. All right, there's a miscommunication going on here, and I think that's what frustrates everybody that's a fan today. It's like, how can the thing you call your minor league be outshining your A and B show? And that's why AEW picked up that ball and ran. I'm very glad to see them really like focused up. I think a lot of people were kind of we were all hyped when they announced it, and those first 90 days, it felt like they're like, okay, you guys, you had all these ideas, but it doesn't feel like you're executing them in the way you guys said you would. And when they came back from that winter break, they've been nonstop, and I feel like they've hit the potential that they promised on that launch, and it's become like must even empty arena, like or close to empty arena that they've been doing with everything going on. Like you're like shit. This is far more entertaining than mostly anything else that you can watch right now. So
and it's a totally a positive thing for like AEW to come around. It really it disrupts the industry in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
I think disruption is important in any industry. You look at like stuff like Uber, Lyft, coming in like with the taxi industry and the shared service, shared ride stuff. Similarly to like AEW and the wrestling industry, it's like we need that. We need it was necessary for like to shake up things, and it's like it's really like you look at the popularity of wrestling now. It's I go to like I wear like I have a Kikutaro Buffet Club shirt.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar in pattern to like the Boy Club shirt. I go to like Disneyland, and people are like giving me like too sweet signs, like the staff, like the cast members at Disneyland are doing that, or even like Doc Brown at Universal Studios gave me like a too sweet. I was like taken back by that. I was just like it was just mind blowing how popular it's become.
It is. It is fascinating. There's the like it's especially the fact that you can wear indie gear or you can wear a Japanese shirt and people are like, oh fuck yeah, I know that. I got my Katsuyori Shibata shirt I wear. It just says the wrestler on it. And more people than I would have ever thought were like, oh, you love Shibata too? I'm like, how in the hell do you know about him? Like, yeah, watching New Japan. Like, I'm in on all that stuff. I'm like, oh, fuck. So it does feel nice that, yes, it's, because there were some stagnant years there. And, especially, and even some of the indie feds, or, to lesser extent, like the smaller groups, it's hard to, there are times I still consider Ring of Honor indie, even though they're kind of mainstream now. But, they kind of fell into like a bit of a rut, and the elite guys going off to do their own thing, I think has helped them tremendously. It's helped, I think, New Japan tremendously. It's helped a lot of people. And the fact that New Japan started getting big has opened the door for people to like start looking to like Noah, All Japan, finding a lot of DDT stuff. Stardom, I think, has been the biggest winner of all that. Seeing what the Japanese women can do. So I think
it took long enough. It took long enough for people to realize how good Japanese wrestling was. I'm so happy to see that boom with especially with New Japan Wrestling and its popularity in the U.S. But quite honestly, it took long enough. This has been something like on my radar since like the early '90s. Even as a wrestling fan, it was surprising. It was surprising me, at the same time, I'm really happy to see it. The boom of Japanese wrestling, and I hope it continues to expand.
Well, as you said, how Uber and Lyft kind of disrupted the taxi industry. Netflix showing everybody you can stream it right from your computer or from your TV. That opened the doors for everybody now. Like the fact that there's not more indie shows like streaming off YouTube right now still astonishes me. That I'm like, you guys could be doing I always feel like there's a lot there's groups that could be doing so much more with some of the talent that they have, but I don't know if it's just a lack of foresight or it's just maybe not understanding, or they just don't have someone that can handle that tech for them. I mean from this right here, case in point, I spent 2 days trying to get my damn computer to work just to record this interview. So Sometimes it does get frustrating with things. It makes you feel like an idiot. I know I did.
No, it's funny to see just the even now I didn't even know for a while High Spots had a streaming service and some of the stuff that's available out there, even Fight TV and whatnot, just to give these guys lower indie level some exposure. Even the whole PWG catalog for the most part, with the exception of the first few shows on High Spots Wrestling Network, which just kind of blew me away. In terms of what's been made available, what people have access to, and I think other things that have just astonished me too over time is just in regards to the popularity of PWG is just the celebrity presence at PWG is just
yeah,
something I would. Well, I mentioned the early days the JCC and whatnot, but even more so the Reseda American Legion Hall. It blows my mind.
Oh yeah, I think once Meltzer really started kind of putting that out there, I was seeing pictures of Ronda Rousey showing up, Joe
Vergara.
Joe Magdalene, the guy that played Deathstroke. I always mispronounce his last name. And Sofia Vergara. Those, I'm what the they're showing up PWG, but yeah, it became the place to go. Macaulay Culkin, I think, was a staple there for a while.
He did some stuff with bar wrestling with Joey on top of. I think he did some ring work. He did some spots in the ring as well.
Yeah,
cool.
My personal claim to fame is that I went to. It was just an off chance. I had the night off work. My buddy's like, "You want to go?" It's PWG's running a show. Let's go. It's yeah, it was still at the old JCC, and we were sitting in the back towards the entrance. So you walk into the booth, and we were second to last row, and the show starts, and a couple of guys come sit behind us. We kind of don't pay any mind to them, but then all of a sudden we start hearing them talk. They're going, "Oh shit, look at that! Oh motherfucker!" I turn to my buddy. I'm like, "That sounds like Violent J." And then we hear this other guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I think." We turn around, we just kind of peek, and it's the Insane Clown Posse and Twisted, and they're sitting there without their makeup, and I'm just like, "Oh fuck, that's them." And I just
was this the Santa Ana Elks Lodge or was it JCC?
It's JCC. Because AJ was on the show. That's why they because I remember him telling me I turned around "Hey man, are you Violent J?" And he kind of looks like fuck. So I'm like, "Dude, don't worry, man." I'm I'm not gonna rat you out or anything like that. I'm just fuck, you're Violent J. He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "We were in town. We heard our boy AJ was on the show. We come check it out. We love fucking wrestling." I'm like, "Oh, sweet. Have you ever been to a PWG show?" He's like, "Nah, but we're watching this shit. It's fucking awesome." I'm like, "Well, enjoy, man. Hey, nice to meet you." Very, very casual, very cool about it. But it was just it turns fucking ICP's here. I mean, I know for a lot of people that's kind of a joke, but you gotta remember 2005, 2006, they were one of the biggest acts out there, and so them just kind of showing up as fans was kind of a deal.
You're not gonna like me for this, but I might have 86 one from our shows at the Elks Lodge backstage. I had no idea who he was though, and I told him I don't know if it was Violent J or
Violent J. Violent J is the big guy. So yeah, Shaggy's the little guy.
Someone told me after that was the guy was part of ICP. So I told him he couldn't be backstage. kind of kicked him out, but he did mention who he was, and it was just I knew who ICP was obviously, but it didn't really resonate with me in terms of okay, should this guy still be backstage or not?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a juggalo. My apologies.
I don't consider myself one either, but it was still hey, look at that. But yeah, I mean, in the overall gestalt of things, the fact that you're seeing celebrities, not your locals. It's not like Cal Worthington showing up to your show. It was these are world-renowned people, and they're spending their Friday night or Saturday night amongst 500-700 hardcore wrestling fans, in close quarters, and watching guys, put on a hell of a show. So
I think I would mark out more Pussy Cal Worthington than I.
It would have been something though. Didn't you guys get the guy from The Last Dragon to come out for one of your matches?
Oh jeez.
I think his name was Tyvek.
When was this?
It was early. I think it was like 2004 or 5. I remember it was a show I missed. I remember somebody posting like, "Dude, the guy from Last Dragon." I want to. I don't remember who he came out with. I kind of want to say Human Tornado, but he might have come out with Scorpio Sky. But like he was there. Like he accompanied somebody to the ring though.
Oh man, that's unfortunate too, because like we don't have a lot of the entrances on like especially on high spots. They don't on the streaming network. They don't have a lot. They haven't captured a lot of the entrances. I think they're like copyright issues.
Yeah, because of the music.
Yeah, I don't remember that off the top of my head, but I have to research. I know we had like Ed Powers, like like B-list celebrity porn stars at our shows and accompanying us for a while. So I don't know if you don't ever watch Ed Powers porn. That's for sure.
All right, man. Well, fuck, we've been going for well over 2 hours now, man. We're pushing 3 right now. So, I want to thank you so much for sitting here and chatting with me, man. It's been nice to reconnect with you first off, and the fact that
hey, it's been my pleasure.
Yeah, the fact that we're in the proximity that we are too is just kind of mind blowing as well.
Yeah, I think the next time we meet, we might be able to meet them.
Yeah, once all this madness is done, yeah, we should definitely do something. So, where can everybody find you? Like that's been another thing too. People have been like, what happened to Top Gun? Like, well, now you know. But if they want to connect with you, where can they connect with you at?
Twitter has been the best avenue for me, at least with reconnecting with the wrestling world. I feel like I've kind of intentionally at times, but unintentionally, distanced myself, from the wrestling world. But at the same time, I want to stay connected. Like I have no regrets for everything that I've done in wrestling. I'm very proud of what I did in wrestling, and I'd like to harvest the friendships, relationships, and even with fans and wrestlers. Have come over time. So Twitter would be the best avenue for contacting me. My handle is just simply Top Gun Talwar, all one word. Search for me on Twitter, and you'll be able to find me.
Awesome. Well, Top Gun, thank you so much for coming on, man. Stay safe out there, because it's kind of a madhouse. And hopefully I can have you back on, once everything kind of comes down. We can delve deeper into some stuff. We can really dig into some matches of yours, and maybe we can do some commentary too.
Absolutely. No, I'd love that. I think I recently had the opportunity to do some commentary with Christian Bokamen in Japan dubbing over like a Osaka pro wrestling match. So that was fun. I'm sure, we can meet up in the future sometime, and I'm much appreciated for, you having me here and on the show.
Well, thank you, man. You're my first official guest. I can't think of anyone better for this new endeavor of mine. So thank you so much, man. And that'll do it for this episode of PyschoBabble, everybody. You can check us out on Twitter. Our handle is panzercrush.com. That is the host site. Check out my other podcast I do about giant monsters called the Kaiju Kingdom Podcast with my loveliest partner, Jessica Sang. That is also up on panzercrush.com, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and wherever you find better podcasts. So for myself and Top Gun, thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.